Hey everyone, my name is Ibrahim, and I'll be going over one of the main openings in chess, which is actually an opening called the King's Gambit. And it's an opening I very much like to play, and something that I've recently learned, and I want to showcase it to you guys, and really just try to see if I can. They say that if you can teach it, you don't really know something till you can teach it. So I feel like if I'm able to teach the concepts of this opening, I feel like I'll know it extremely well, and I feel confident to play enough in real games. So yeah, here we go. So white starts off with pawn to e4, and black will respond to pawn to e5, and then white will respond with pawn to f4, sacrificing it essentially. Now black has mainly two options here. The first option of which black can actually decline the gambit, but we're just going to be going over the lines where black does take the free pawn and hence accepts the gambit. Now white actually has, now the main move that a lot of advanced players play in this position is generally bishop to f4, which now attacks black's king side, takes an aim at this weak pawn here on f7. But this is a move that's just always used for it's usually reserved for advanced players, and it's a very well known line played by Bobby Fischer, was a very world famous chess player in the past. But usually for beginners and intermediate players, it's generally recommended that they play a move such as g3, knight g3. Now black has, there's two things that this does actually. First of all, white develops their knight, and it also prevents black's queen coming down to h4 and putting white's king in check. So very useful move here for white. And now black usually in this case, when they take pawns, they're usually trying to hold on to this pawn because they want to hold on to that advantage in their material, because you see obviously black has a slight advantage now because of that one pawn. So they'll usually try to do everything they possibly can to keep that pawn from being lost. So a common move black will generally play in this position will be pawn to g5, which protects this pawn and kind of anchors it to this square right here. And you notice that white can't actually take this pawn because black's queen is protecting it. One thing you do notice is that black's king side is visibly weakened, as you can see from the pawn move to g5. Black's king is not in a very good position here, so white's going to take advantage of this by playing a move pawn to h4. What this immediately does is now kind of threaten to take away the defender from pawns f4 pawn. So yeah, black could take, and then we could take back immediately. White could take back immediately with their knight, and then now they'll have a stranded pawn, which will probably be in the next couple moves will be taken back eventually by white. So a lot of the time, black will just come down and play pawn to g4, which clearly attacks our knight right here. And another good thing about this knight here that's being thrown on f3 is that we actually are able to move this and the pawn actually on h4. We're able to make kind of like a knight outpost on g5 right here. And then you can already see that we're kind of in black's base. and his king side's weakened, so we're going to be starting an attack. So a lot of the time, black will generally try to get rid of this knight because it's in a pretty strong position where it's attacking black's king side right now, and this kind of threatens bishop f4. There's very various fork threats here from black, and generally what black will do now is actually just try to kick the knight out by playing. So you may see a move such as pawn to h6, which attacks the knight here, and obviously the knight can. You can see that now the knight actually can't go back to h3 because it will be taken. It can't go back to f3 because it will be taken. Can't even go to e4 because white's pawn is on e4. Can't go to e6 because he will be taken by black's pawn. And then the only other move there is you know, knight to f7. So it may look like the knight's actually screwed, but that's actually not the case. What white can actually do here is actually sacrifice their knight. And for a lot of people that study chess, it's very known that for black, the f7 square is actually very weak. It's a known weakness. So after basically the knight takes it, then once black recaptures, you can clearly see that black's king is in a very compromised position and very exposed in contrast with the white's king. Yeah, and what white can do here is now play bishop to f4 and kind of attack white's black's king. And what we also want to get some development, also we can also put the queen on a very strong square here, right? Very close to the king, threatening the king in many different ways. Yeah, so basically it depends on what move you have to do. It really depends on the move we do here first, which is the move we want to do is not bishop to f4 because black can just play pawn to d5 and really just thwart that whole attack. So the actual right move to play here is queen to g4. Now black will generally try to protect their exposed king in this instance with black knight to f6, but now white can actually just bring up their bishop to f4 and just attack here, and it's just very messy. White can castle here, bring their rook on the f file, line it up with the king. It causes all sorts of trouble to black, and it's really just terrible position for black. Um, you know what I mean? Also, yeah, there's also a line where um, also another thing white can do is this completely play bishop here, and let's say there's a lot of threats here actually. There's a threat of pawn to e5. You know what I mean? All sorts of threats. It's just a terrible position, honestly. And say we go back. No, let's say slow down there. Hold on. Let's say you know black decides to play a move like this to prevent that. We have bishop to f7. It's just really just there's no point of even struggling here. Position's too weak. For black, there's already a huge disadvantage for black, and it's soon there's going to be a mate soon for black. So yeah.